Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our second ever HAPA live talkback with the awesome Cody Jamison Strand. We are so lucky that he's joining us today. I'm not going to give too much away, but he has, and actually he is on Broadway. So I'm going to have Cody introduce himself.
Hi.
Hey. So tell us a little bit about you, Cody. What you been up to? Who are you?
Okay. Hello. My name is Cody Jamison Strand. I am currently Elder Cunningham in the Book of Mormon on Broadway. Ah.
Woo!
It's a sweet gig.
That's awesome. And where are you from, Cody?
Originally, I am from South Dakota, born and raised. And now I live in New Jersey and work in New York City.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, Cody, I'm just a little curious for the sake of my students. What were your steps to getting where you are? Sort of just like educationally, but also just what steps did you take to get here?
Sure. Okay, so I'll give you the rundown. I was born and raised in South Dakota. I did musicals and theater, in the high school and all that goodness. And then I went to college for it, and I got rejected from every college I auditioned for, except for one, which was the state school. So I, majored in theater at the University of South Dakota. Yay! Very small class. I was literally the only person to graduate with my degree that year, BFA in acting. So that's fun. Class of one. There are other theater students, but my major, only one. And then I moved to New York City when I was 23 years old. And Book of Mormon had already been on for a year at that time. And obviously, lightning struck, and it was like the right place at the right time. And I got the job almost immediately. And I've been doing it ever since. So that's kind of the rundown. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Or like how things usually happen. But
That's wild. It's like you sound like kind of an anomaly. It worked out well for you though, didn't it?
Oh yeah. It's because it's not usually the case, I guess. But a lot of it has to do with, if anyone's seen the show, there's the part that's the Josh Gad part, and it's like just right. So it's fit like a glove.
Yeah, for sure. Sense. And how long have you been playing the role?
I passed 7 years in November, which is kind of bonkers because I've done, I think at this point it's over 3,000 performances. It's definitely over 3,000. But yeah, so I've been doing it for 7 years in November, so it's 7.5 now.
Wow. Okay, so I teach acting at Hammond Academy for the Performing Arts. And I'm sure my students would love to hear, what is it like to play a role for that long?
It's not something you can really prepare for, because it's one of those things I find that it comes and goes in waves of like 6 months, if that makes sense, right? So like when you first start doing it, it's the most incredible, amazing thing that you're doing, because it's like I was fresh out of college. I was doing this huge show. I started on the tour actually, and as I started as a standby, I did 6 months as a standby, and then I got bumped up to doing it. So I started as a standby, and that was amazing, right? And I didn't have to do anything. I was just backstage waiting for my time to go on stage, and then that was amazing. And then 6 months later, they were calling and they're like, "Hey, we fired the guy on Broadway, so you're going to take over." So I went and I joined Broadway company as the guy all of a sudden. And then that was another wave of momentum, and then I went back on a tour, and then I did London, and then I'm back here in New York. And so that's kind of helped keep things fresh, I guess. But doing things for so many, I'm rambling, but doing things for so many performances in a row, it helps, one, that it's a comedy. Because if I was doing Les Mis, I would have thrown myself from the roof years ago. And then it helps that the character is so crazy. He's the wrench in the engine of the play. You know what I mean? So the good thing about, and like the creators of the show trust me enough at this point that they kind of let me do whatever I want, which is amazing and not something that happens really in shows all the time. And that helps keep things fresh, because if I get bored or I feel things have gotten stale or not working anymore, the jokes are so well written that you can kind of do them a million different ways and they'll still work, you know? So the writing helps a lot and the laughs help a lot, you know?
Yeah. I mean, a well-written joke will take you really far.
Right. And I love to make people laugh. That's like my thing. So it helps, you know?
That's super cool.
Yeah. So hearing the laugh, you're always like, oh yeah, I'm doing the right thing. This works.
Do you remember the first time you stepped out in that role?
Yes. I was in San Francisco. I had just started as a standby, right? And so I had started, we did actually a rehearsal. I rehearsed, there were 2 tours at the time. I rehearsed with the Chicago company, where I was shadowing Ben Platt because he was taking over as Cunningham in Chicago. And then they shipped me out after that month of rehearsal where I was just watching. I wasn't doing anything, just observing and learning and, you know, memorizing lines by myself, basically. They shipped me out to the first national tour, which was starring Jared Gertner and Gavin Creel at the time. And I got there on Monday. I rehearsed Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, they were like, Jared's sick, you have to go on. And so I went on Thursday and Friday with Gavin Creel, Tony Award winner Gavin Creel, and I was losing my mind. I actually don't remember anything about it. The only thing I remember is I got stuck on a set piece at one point, and Gavin had to help me out of it. And it was really funny, but I don't remember anything else. It was all a blur. I remember Gavin calling me sweaty, and that's about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I literally didn't perform the show again for like 6 months until I was doing the show on Broadway.
Oh, wow. And did it feel easier, you think, when you got to Broadway because of that experience?
No. It's okay. So the part, if you haven't seen the show, it's like there's like the 2 parts. It's like Elder Price and Elder Cunningham. And especially Act 1, they don't leave the stage except for a song, right? Otherwise, it's them on stage together, kind of driving the ship and then it ends with like Cunningham's big dance number, which is a crime, and whoever did that. So getting that, especially as like, you know, like, because I'm like the funny fat guy, right? So like the fat is the important part because there's a lot of jokes in the show. So the energy it takes, the physical demands of the show were something that I wasn't used to, right? So that took a solid 6 months to a year of doing the show 8 times a week to be able to do comfortably, where I didn't have to think about that kind of a thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So like, yeah, I would say. But I was scared for like a year. You know what I mean? The show had just started and they were firing people left and right. Okay, so I was like the only one to make it out alive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and good on you for it. Seriously. And so we are so lucky to have you here because you know our director, the director of HAPA, Scott Sawinski, correct?
I do. He and I go
Tell us a little
back.
bit about how you guys know each other.
Well, he and I, an undisclosed amount of years ago, did 2 shows together, actually, at a theater in New Hampshire. It was called the Interlakes Theater. And it was it's like a summer stock. Do your students know what a summer stock theater is?
They should, yes.
Okay.
I hope.
So like in between years of college, often college students will go and perform at these theaters that only really operate during the summer around the country. And this one was in New Hampshire, where Scott and I we did a show called the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, where I was Barfay and he was Vice Principal Panch. And then the next year I came back and he came back and we did Man of La Mancha together. So we worked for 2 years together. Yeah.
Awesome.
Fun.
All right. Yeah. So I am going to actually bring on one of our students. Tamia Crawley, I believe, is first, who just has a couple questions for you herself.
Oh, fabulous.
Hello. Hey, Tamia.
Hi.
Hi. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, how much training did you have to go through to prior to being on Broadway, like including like college? Because I know colleges usually ask when you're applying, like, oh, what training did you go through, or
Yeah. So the training question is tricky because it's kind of different for everybody, if that makes sense. So I trained, I guess, before college by just like doing stuff. I mean, I lived in South Dakota, so there wasn't a lot, so there was like every year they did the High School Musical, that kind of a thing. But it wasn't until college where I really started working on it. And that was, doing the theater major and getting the education that way. It was a 4-year degree. I did voice lessons with the opera department to learn singing and that kind of a thing. But training wise, that was all really, because what I've learned the most, I've learned on the gig.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to know if you had ever written your own work, or if you wanted to do like your own like play or musical, or like if you've ever.
I would love to. I've dabbled in writing. I've written a couple things that are horrible. I've written a lot of things that are just horrible. But the thing is, you got to keep doing it. And I really have nothing to show for it other than I like it. And, someday I would like to do that, if that makes sense. But I just write and keep writing, and eventually you'll probably write something really good. It just takes practice.
Yeah. I have one more.
Go for it.
What is your dream role, if you ever could have a dream role on Broadway?
Well, the funny thing about the dream role is that I'm kind of doing it. It's weird because now it's like, well, where do I go from here? And the answer is probably down. I've kind of hit the peak, and now it's like, oh no, like this. Yeah. I've done the dream role, so now what's next? Who knows? There are a couple things I'd love to do. Like I'd love to do Spelling Bee again. I'd love to do Guys and Dolls, which is so lame, but it's like, I'd love to do Guys and Dolls. But other than that, I'd love to do a play because singing is hard. That's my answer. A play would be nice.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. I hope I helped.
Thanks, Tamia. Thank you. I think that something I want to point out, it's coming up over and over for the students who are listening, is that it sounds like you have to learn by doing. Like even when your goal is Broadway, you have to do everything you possibly can, whether that be writing or performing. Would you agree, Cody?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, doing it, because like you can learn a lot by reading and the hypothetical of it all, but doing it, like, it's just, there's no better education, especially when you're surrounded by, people that you respect and enjoy their work too. Then that's really rewarding.
Yeah. Are you finding any ways to keep yourself performing or in the theater world right now?
I haven't. So the long answer is yes, but the short answer is no. I haven't sang in 4 weeks. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've earned it. But I've been reading a lot. That's what I'm doing. I've challenged myself because obviously Broadway is shut down, and I haven't had a job for 4 weeks. But I've been reading a play a day. That's been my challenge. So
that's awesome.
I have a shelf full of plays that I've never read. Nope, just spit on my keyboard, and I'm doing that.
Did you guys hear that? A play a day, students.
A play a day.
He's reading a play a day.
90 minutes. It only takes 90 minutes to read a play. So
there you go.
Today was Gem of the Ocean by August Wilson. Fabulous.
I actually haven't read that one yet, but I also have it on the shelf. So I'll have to pull it out.
It's beautiful.
Awesome. So we are going to bring in Lilia Wolf next, who is a sophomore.
Hello.
Hi, Lilia. So what questions do you have for Cody, Lilia?
So my first one is, what was the audition process like for being in the Book of Mormon? Like, how was it different than like
Yeah.
regional and stuff?
It was, I can tell you what I remember, okay? Because it was, one, it was a long time ago, and two, it was horrifying, okay? So like you have auditions that are, you know, you do for like school or for a regional theater, and I've done all those, and I always felt excited and nervous, but mostly excited, right, to do that thing and to have that opportunity. And it's always been a positive energy because auditioning is fun, and it's, you know, I just enjoy that part. But auditioning for the Book of Mormon, I got it in my head that it was like scarier than what it needed to be, right? So like it was several rounds, so I'll just describe it. The first audition was, I went in and it was just the casting director and someone playing the piano and then someone reading the other parts for like the scene work, right? And I made a mistake right away. I walked in and the casting director is a woman, and I gave all of my headshots and resume to the man in the room because I was a jerk. And then immediately she was like, okay, this guy's a clown, right? You know, cross him off. And so I knew that I had already blown my shot right away. And she was like, okay, do you want to do the scenes or do you want to do the songs? Because we only have time to do one. So I was like, oh, great. So she doesn't even want to hear me. So I sang, I was Man Up that I sang first. And then she was like, wait a minute, suddenly we have more time. We can hear the rest of it. And that ended up, you know, and then the second round was for the associate director. So that wasn't for, like, Casey Nicola and Trey Parker directed the show, but the directors of Broadway shows have like assistants, and they're not assistants, they're like associate directors. And they usually stick around the show during the run and they keep the show intact, if that makes sense. Because if shows are around for years and years and years, things tend to drift into, you know, so the associate director was there, and it was like a work session, and he worked with me, and it went well. And then I got called back for another audition, and suddenly I walk into this audition room, and it's for Ann Garfino, who produces South Park. It's for Trey Parker, who writes South Park. It's for Bobby Lopez, who wrote the music for Frozen and Avenue Q, and, you know, I mean, huge people. Casey Nicola, who directed Book of Mormon. You know what I mean? Like, everybody in there. And I had my sheets of paper with all my lines on it, and I just dropped them all. Like, I saw them and I dropped them. Like, I think that it was like a joke, but I was just like, whoop, and I dropped them. You know what I mean? So I had to pick all my stuff up. And then that audition went well, I guess. And then they had the last audition, which was on the stage of the Eugene O'Neill Theater, which is the theater where Book of Mormon plays in New York. And then they brought in different actors to do the show with you, right? Like Matt Doyle actually came in and he read with me, and he actually was the guy they ended up doing the show with, you know. And I remember that was like the coolest thing that ever happened in my life, because I was like auditioning on the stage of Book of Mormon, you know, and then I ended up doing it, and that was cooler, obviously. But that was like what the audition process was like. And it all happened over 2 weeks. So you did all those auditions, and then Hurricane Sandy hit. I don't know if you remember that, but Hurricane Sandy hit, and all the power shut off in New York City, and it was out for like a week and a half. And then the day the power came back on is when I got the call that they were like, Cody, you got the job. You have to pack your bags, and you're going to San Francisco to join the tour tomorrow.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was kind of how it happened. It was wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's horrifying. I don't think I've ever sweat so much in my life. And the other thing was, I remember the very first audition, I went in and I wore what I thought was the cutest outfit ever. It was like, and I actually wore it for that production of Spelling Bee that I did with Scott. It was like this teal Argyle bow tie thing. And I thought I looked good. Like, I thought it was like a cute nerd kind of thing. And they're like, Cody's great. Burn the outfit. I never wore that again. So I never wore it ever again.
Okay. So how do you, like, before a show, how do you get into character and everything? Like, prepare yourself.
Yeah. So nowadays, after 7.5 years of doing it, it's second nature. So I don't need to do character work, if that makes sense. What I do now, because I'm getting old, is I have to stretch. So I literally do like yoga. I have my little yoga mat, and I'll do like a little, downward dog and sun salute, and then stretch out my old bones to be able to do the show and pretend like I'm 19, which I am not. But back in the day when I first started doing it, because the role is, I don't want to say demanding because I don't want to make it sound like it's hard or, like I'm doing a lot of work because it's like fun, it's theater.
Mhm.
But before it was a big mental game. I remember the very first show that I ever did, I was a mental wreck, like emotional wreck. And Gavin Creel came into a room, who I idolized, by the way, Gavin Creel.
Yeah.
And he was like, we're just here to tell a story. That's it. And that kind of took all the pressure off. And that was a really nice thing to say. And I remember that ever since.
That's real cool.
I don't have anything to help you get the character because I am a crazy person, so it's easy.
Yeah. That's great. All right. So, and then a last fun one is there what's your favorite character in the show besides Elder Cunningham?
That's a really good one. And I should have an answer for that. You know what? Right now, it's Hadestown.
Oh, I love Hadestown.
Hermes in Hadestown. Andre DeShields.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's the G.
Absolutely.
I saw him on stage. That's probably my favorite performance I've seen in a long time.
I was supposed to go to New York over spring break and see Hadestown, and then I couldn't. So, yeah.
No. It's horrible.
Yeah,
so
I was really looking forward to that, but it'll happen someday.
It's really good. It definitely will, and it'll be around. It's going to run for a long time.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lilia.
Bye.
Bye. All right, we have one more student to talk to, who is Jamarion Evans, and he is one of our seniors. Where's Jamarion?
Oh,
or no, he's a junior. I'm losing my mind. Hi, Jamarion.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, and Jamarion has a few questions for you. He played Ursula in our production of The Little Mermaid earlier this year.
I love that.
All right, here's Jamarion.
I'm jealous of that. That's a dream role. Oh my goodness, what was I thinking?
So
that'd be amazing.
So you're okay. So one of my biggest fears is because Broadway is the ultimate goal for me. And one of my biggest worries and fear is that damage of my voice, because you keep going. There's a lot of shows. Like your biggest thing to help keep your voice healthy.
Yeah, so that's a challenge because vocal health is very important. And it's something that you have to be careful of, because I've seen greats. I've seen amazing people that have, damage. And it's kind of something that, you want to avoid. Because if it can happen to Julie Andrews, it can happen to anybody. Okay? So one of the main things is you got to know when to not overdo it, and that means not just in this show, that means in life besides the show. Like the show is your job, obviously, and that's a certain demand, but also talking with friends or going out and having a party or, doing things that are loud that will affect then your job. It's things you have to make certain sacrifices. And if you're starting, especially a long run, you kind of have to start out living like a monk a little bit. You have to kind of feel it out. Mind you, when you're young,
because anybody.
Oh yeah. Anybody. It can happen to
anybody in the HAPA program can tell you I'm the kid in the hallway that's belting notes for no reason. Right,
but if you got the notes healthy, then you got the notes. So that's like I scream 24/7 in the show, and it's all like but it's just something I can do. So that's not like a danger there. But also the show isn't like a killer. Like for example, Alex Brightman, you know who he is. He was in School of Rock. And that show is an entirely different monster vocally. And literally every person that's done the show has experienced repercussions vocally, because that's just the demands of it. and it's something that you have to be very careful about. Certain quick fixes, hot tea with lemon, throat coat. You know about throat coat? Throat coat's good. It's like a hot tea. Also vocal rest. You know, like I'm home alone during the day a lot, and I don't do a whole lot if I'm working during the week. So I will be at home, and it's just me and my dogs, you know, and my video games, and I'll do video games. Or if it's a Friday night or Saturday night, because you have to do 2 shows the next day, I go immediately home and I go to sleep because it's a big day the next day, if that makes sense. But it's also personal.
And then, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, it's just like, it's different for everybody. Like, you know, I feel like people can feel their limits. It's something you can feel coming on, and you're like, oh, maybe I should stop. Definitely.
Yeah. And then I only had my other question was, I am a believer that anything that you really love, there's going to be a challenge. There's going to be some type of thing that you're going to have to push through. What was like the biggest issue on getting to Broadway, or what is the advice whenever you come towards a big problem or issue and you have to push through it?
That's a good question. So probably the biggest challenge that I have in this show or with this job so far has been the physical nature of it, because I'm a big boy, right? And doing a musical requires movement because they tend to dance in musicals. And they gave Cunningham, like, he has like the dance song, like there's several, but he has like this big moment, and it's like a moment in the show. And it's also like a rock and roll patter song, and it takes a lot. And so my biggest challenge was figuring out that I had to go to the gym. You know, which is something I'd never done before, but like I have like a personal trainer and I have weights, you know what I mean? And that's like a personal challenge that I had to overcome. It sounds stupid, but for someone who's never set foot in a gym, that was like a huge deal. It was a huge deal for me.
Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah, it's scary.
All right, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So thanks so much, Jamarion. Oh, I thought I could hear him there. All right, Cody. So we are going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up. But is there so if you were talking to Cody Jamison Strand, like 18 years old right now, like what does he need to know?
Big things that I've learned. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, because everybody's journey is different. One person's success is not your failure. That's a big one. You know what I mean? Because seeing someone else succeed does not mean that you failed, and that does not mean that you cannot be happy for that person while also still being driven to do better next time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are a couple, I don't want to get anecdotal, but I did all of the original workshops for School of Rock, the musical, right? And it didn't end up working out. And now Alex Brightman is like a superstar. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that I can't still believe in myself and my talent and my abilities, while also, you know, still being happy for him, because he's a great person. He's incredibly talented. You know what I mean? And he's a monster on stage, absolute monster. So it's like, you know, good for you, and I'll do better next time. And it's, you know, I shouldn't lower myself because he's doing really well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's something so many teenagers.
It's hard. It's so hard to, like, because you get down, and it's important not to go there, because good things happen to everybody. One door closing means another door will open. You know what I mean? And a door closing doesn't mean it's locked.
Totally. So. Yes. Also, so we have our awesome MC in the background, Miss Broussard, who has a specific Book of Mormon question for you. So we're going to bring her in really quick.
Yeah, it's totally like just Book of Mormon, whatever. But one of my favorite things about the show is the names that you make up for Nabulungi. And so it's just, I mean, I can't. And I saw it in Chicago with Ben. And
yeah, he's fabulous.
I just like, what are some of your favorite, I don't know if everybody knows this, but like Elder Cunningham makes up, right, because he can't say her name.
that I don't know if it's because he can't say it. I feel like it's because he's not listening.
That's true.
But that's open to
Or his
interpretation.
care level is really low. Yeah.
Yeah. But instead of saying Nabalunki, he says, a whole bunch of things, and then it evolves into the more ludicrous as the show goes on. Like it might start with Neutrogena and then end with Notorious B.I.G. You know what I mean? Like that's one of my favorites. Or a big one right now is Nancy Pelosi. That always like brings the house down, right? Especially when she first got reinstated as the House Speaker. That was huge. And then it got a little contested because people are too political and can't take a joke. My favorite one of all time is Nancy Kerrigan. Because that makes me laugh. But also, if I want to completely ruin any scene I'm in, I'll do Namaste Namasama Makusa. And that usually, but I have to be careful with that one because it just ruins the show. It's like, but it's good. It's a good funny, but it takes, you know what I mean?
And you get to like choose kind of, you can make your own. Yeah, that's awesome.
I have like a Rolodex in my head, because I've done about everything.
Sure.
Some have worked, some have not, it's the joy of trying out new jokes, because I always, people on stage too will be like, hey, I thought of this, try this. And then I'll do that while they're watching. And if it doesn't work, you kind of look back at stage real quick and shoot them a glance.
Yeah, you're like, thanks a lot.
Way to go, buddy.
Good suggestion.
Yeah. That's always fun.
Yeah. So that was my only well, it's not my only, but whatever. It's my question because I always love that.
Yeah, I get creative freedom. There are some that they do want you to say. Like there's a couple that bookend really nicely, different references in the show. But most of them I get to play with. The one that I like to play with the most is the one that's in the one dramatic scene in the show, just to see if I can mess with people.
Yeah.
Just in case. Just in case. Because I think I get a little devil horns, I like.
Especially after over 3,000 shows. Got to keep it fresh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's all I had.
That's good.
Awesome. So yeah, unless there's anything else important. Actually, you know what? We get this question all the time, so I'm going to ask one more thing before we let you go. And who is the coolest or most famous or person you were most excited to meet once? Who's the coolest person you've met?
Could I do coolest and least coolest?
Please.
The least coolest one I'm not afraid of. Super famous guy, but he'll never, he doesn't care about me, so it's fine. The coolest person I've ever met backstage was probably either Rosario Dawson, who's a famous actress, and she's incredible, but she was just very talkative and wanted to know about our experience. My favorite was Drake Bell. Do you know who Drake Bell is? From Drake and Josh?
Yes.
He and I clicked. We were we just talked, and it ended up being this huge thing. And then now we're friends on Instagram, and I'm like, this is cool, me and
I'm why was he even back there? But
he just wanted to see the show, and then a lot of the times, famous people have a different channel that they buy tickets through. It's so weird. It's so weird. They have people that do that for them. So we always know ahead of time when there's someone famous in the audience because they'll buy their tickets through this certain channel. It's very weird and very elite. You know what I mean? It's okay, guys, calm down. Calm down. You're not Michelle Obama. Calm down. And so then we'll know, and then they'll always be like, hey, so-and-so wants to come back after the show. And we'll know ahead of time if they want to come back and say hello. And sometimes they cancel. And that's always fun. But we'll know in advance. Drake Bell wants to come back and say hello. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Drake. Let's take a job, It's my favorite one, though. It is also the worst celebrity experience I've ever had, was with Mike Myers. Hours. It was Mike Myers came to see Book of Mormon. And it was when I was on Broadway the first time, so I was an idiot. I was 24 at the time, and I didn't know how to act at all. But still, he was trying, I think at that time, was looking at doing an Austin Powers musical. And so that's why he came and saw the show. But then he ended up just doing, I forget what it was. I think it was The Love Guru, LOL. But then he came backstage, and he was standing in the middle of this group of 6 huge dudes that were his his like posse, like his, I don't want to call them bodyguards because they didn't seem like that. But then like the group would like open up and he'd like pop out and shake someone's hand, and then he'd pop back in and go, and they would like close around him. And I remember being like, I thought it was strange, but I didn't want to say anything because it was Mike Myers, you know what I mean?
Oh
And I even like jumped in there like, hi, I love your work. And he was like, hey, thank you. And you're like, it was so bizarre. And then I left and I turned to the Michael Potts, and he's like the G. He was the original Mafala Hatimbi on Broadway. And I was like, was that weird? And he was like, yeah, that was weird. I was like, okay, good. Mike Myers. Very strange.
That is
Very
so
strange,
weird.
Yeah.
I also am just like picturing Austin Powers like in the audience of the Book of Mormon, which is
They
a whole
had,
other
like, a
thing.
whole, what do you call it? The side thing. I should know what that is. Was it a booth?
Something like that.
I should know that.
A box.
Yes. And they had like a whole thing. They had a whole thing there.
That's awesome.
Austin Powers, weird.
Super weird.
Yeah.
All right, Cody. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today.
Thank
We
you for having me.
so seriously appreciate it.
Oh.
You good?
Oh, my headphones. But we're good. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cody. And students, I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, I don't know how to leave. Do I just click leave studio?
Melissa will end the video.
Oh.
In just a second.